expectation, oh, change the world in a big way and all of that, you know, but it doesn't have to be. It can be, okay, I'm gonna, bring you some vegetables that we grew in our garden. Just an example. I don't grow stuff, but or I'm this afternoon I'm gonna bake bread and bring it to friends and neighbors, So I mean these things, but my God, what fun in doing it and at what, it's like the energy, the positive energy. Like
Yeah.
we're all free to scatter it, is what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah. And something that came to me a while ago that I was reminded of when you were listening to you is, you might not be able to change the world as one person, but you could change the world for one person, right? Like you
Well
don't
put.
know what that one act of service could do to
Yes.
somebody. Like you hear people all the time, but like, oh, I met this stranger. They said this one thing, they did this one thing, and it completely changed the trajectory of my life, like, and just being that being in that energy that we're all talking about, that Alicia brought
Mhm.
up, and that we're all feeling is like being able to just express yourself in that way. And even reading what Christina said before she topped off and just allowing people to be themselves, right? Permitting others to be themselves, not to show it in other whether they can or can't. Like just having that compassion and allowing people to show up however they can, allowing ourselves to be big when we want to be, allow ourselves to be calm and whatever, like allow and just coming back to that self-love, allowing ourselves, loving ourselves wherever we are at, having that compassion, that care, allowing us to show up in whatever feels good in that moment. And then inviting everyone to ask for what they want, right?
Mhm.
And ask the people around you, like, hey,
Mhm.
I would love to hear from you about like, can I, and like how much you love me. I realize that that really means a lot to me. Is that
Mhm.
something you're willing to do? Right? You can have open a conversation or just start by being an example, telling them, I love you so much. And they're like, they might be like, what's happening? You know? But, but my mom, Olivia, so we took in a stray cat when I was little, this little munchkin of a cat. And my mom would call it forced kitty love. So she would just force the cat, love it too so much until it became an affectionate cat. And it worked. It works. It's just like love melts people, right? Especially
That's
when
right.
it's
She hated being held. And
yeah.
so we forced Kitty love on her. That's right.
We would just hold her like she was like and she'd like "Argh," and then all of a sudden she's like, I actually this is pretty great. And then she's like coming on laps and obviously you can't do that to a person, but
No.
you get the point.
Well, but I mean, but I think too, I mean, there's often like a history, right, that caused like a distrust, that there's
Mhm.
something behind it often.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so it's like the reprogramming that my mom was talking about, right? And it's like another
Right.
way, like if
Mhm.
you know, are able to show it, like, because also the more we love ourselves, the more capable we are of loving. I always love is the basis of reality. It is the most prevalent force in the universe, and the more you love, the more you are capable of loving, and like allow the cup to
Mhm.
spilleth over, right? And if you have that within you, allow yourself to give it out, right? Like I'm always telling strangers, like when I see something I like, I'm like, I see this beautiful woman at the farmer's market and she's in her own world. And I just look at her. I was like, I love your smile. And she just looked at me like, whoa. And like, it genuinely was like, wow, she's so like her smile is so radiant, and like, I just
I,
wish that more people were like that. Go ahead, Mom. Oh, yeah, you're a little
yeah,
like
I
it's
had
like camo back
I
there.
had
Okay.
my hand up, and it's great because I'm gonna introduce a little change to the conversation, but I just wanted to speak to that you just said, which is that I remember hearing, especially I took a class when your brother was born, he was a newborn, and she was saying how you praise children and the language you use gives them self authority. So rather than saying, that's a good picture or this is good, you say, I like that. Do you like it? Are you proud? You might be proud of yourself for that or whatever. And so I've used that as with adults too, which is like what you were saying, Vanessa. And one of the ways I love to spread love is like you're saying, compliment people. And I'll try to find things, especially at the grocery store, where, somebody in the checkout, I'll often say, I really love your hair or whatever, I love your shirt. I like your shirt, something like that. And I feel like it means more than your hair looks great, because that puts me in a position of being the judge. You guys see the difference? And so it's just very nuanced, but I just thought I'd bring that up because I love how you said that, Vanessa, that you express it from an I message. And I just think that's important or powerful for me. And I did want to mention, you were saying about, well, it has to do with compliments too. If you know Matt Kahn, I know you do, Vanessa, but he's a spiritual teacher. And one of the things he uses compliments, if somebody's upset with him, he's had experiences where, like he bumped somebody or he got in line, and the woman, he said one time a woman got really angry with him. And so he just looked at her and he goes, I really love your scarf. And she just snapped out of it and was smiling. So it's a great way. Yeah. And then I have a couple notes here because
I would love to, if you're going to switch
Yeah.
subjects, I want to come back to you, but I want to thank you for bringing that up because that is a really great nuance. And I love the realization, like we're not the authority, right? Like, and just saying like, I like that. And like with kids, it's like I'm like, you should be so proud of yourself. I love that nuance, and I went blank. So thank you for clarifying. And I want to hear what other thoughts you have.
Well, yeah. So the other thing, because there's so many, and I just want to say, I so enjoy this group. I've always wanted to be in a think tank. Like I just had this idea that just people exploring ideas would be fun. So just thank you in general. So the other thing I want to bring us back to what Betty was saying. Did she lose? Oh, we draw. Oh no, there she is. Okay. And also kind of what about Alicia around her, like Betty's grandson. And so something I've noticed, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is that I think the children being born in the last like 5 or 6 or maybe even 10 years are at a higher level evolutionarily. It's like they seem to have wisdom, maybe not all, but I've just seen, and I've asked other people as well, that there's just this deep wisdom that they seem to have beyond what I had when I was that age. So I'm curious if anybody else has noticed that.
Yeah. Olivia, I'm the worst person to answer this. A grandmother is always going to be the worst expert on her grandkid. But I agree. Sometimes I actually look at that little guy and think, wow, was I capable of that when I was his age? And do kids do this usually? And 2 or 3 things make me feel like it's my gratitude for what nature has produced in front of me. I didn't realize before so much was going on. They're not just little blobs. So 50-50, I think that we are, let's see, who mentioned, Sabine, you mentioned receiving, knowing how to receive. I know how to look now. And it's a classic truth that the grandparents can get things right that they maybe were too nervous to do when they were younger. So as I observe this little guy, I think, what a wonder. And yes, he seems to be much further ahead than kids or all of us,
It's on a soul level, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, I love that. I think too, it's that the generations that came, everybody's pre-paving, right? Like y'all have you were that for your grandparents. They were looking at you going, wow, these kids, right? It's like mind blowing, right? Like it's always an expansion of consciousness. It's always the one experiencing the one expressing itself as an individual, and every time it's exponentially growing and expanding, and so we get to continually witness the fruits of the labors of our ancestors, right? That this path of continually growing and expanding and becoming even better versions of ourselves in every sense of the word. And so I love that we get to witness that and continue to cultivate that. And so I want to acknowledge all of you for being a part of the pre-paving of bringing in the space and the energy for everyone who comes after you to explore and grow in exponential ways.
Well, can I just add to that? If you think about reincarnation, share the story about when I was packing photographs.
So my mom was packing. Yeah, we were moving out. She was living in the main house. I was living in the back house, and I was helping her pack the main house. And on the table was a picture of my high school photo and then a portrait of my grandfather, so my mom's dad. And I had this download. Like I just all of a sudden I was looking at myself and myself. I was like, whoa,
And
we're
he died
like
when I was 5, so she never met him.
Yeah. Wow.
So I was clearly not born yet. And I was looking at the eyes of my grandfather and I was like, this is beyond genetics. Like I feel like I'm looking into my own soul. And I had this moment of like, am I my own grandpa? And then I actually I was like, that feels really real. And I even spoke to like channelers and psychics and they were like, at first they were like, huh? And then they were like, oh wait, yeah, you were. And I remember when I went to my mom and I was like, I brought it up and you looked at me like you saw a ghost and you were like, oh my
And I went,
God.
hi, Dad.
Hi. Now it's like this ongoing joke of like, she finds something, it's like, oh, I found something of yours, and it's like gone with the car, and I'm like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
You know, and you
Yeah.
said you were like, oh, because I mean, you can't really tell in this light, but I have red hair. It's deep auburn now that I'm older, but you know, my mom didn't have red hair. My my brothers don't have red hair, and so, and my
But
mom was like, oh.
my father had red hair.
Right. She was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, she's in," and they thought, and your sisters, your sisters, your brothers didn't have red hair.
Nope.
It was like,
I was
like on a
supposed
soul, I was
to,
like, no,
but
I'm the redhead, guys. I get to be
Yeah.
the fiery one.
the reason I thought about that is because I think we see these younger generations that we're birthing through, and maybe we get to be the beneficiary of our earlier being good to our, our lineage, is that then we get to be the baby again in a future life if that's in your belief system. So I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, I actually thought about that earlier, like with the generational stuff. It's like we love our soul family, right? So it's like we choose to be reincarnated. I believe this, right? Like you're all entitled to your own. It's like I believe that we come back into the same family because we love each other so much, right? Like I'm like, oh, I want to be, you know, with my mom again. I want to be able to play dominoes and Rubik's Cube and talk about consciousness and self-love and good things, you know, and like
Yeah.
and get to do it again and again and again and again.
Yeah. Wow. Who was it who said the child is father to the man? I can't, it's one of the earlier American writers, I think. But I think that's more along the lines of who we are today, where this pre-paving is an interesting idea. The child is the father of the person he's going to become. And things that the child goes through show up later in life. But you've got a new take on it, and I'm going to be thinking about that tonight. You know, I listened to you it's past 10 o'clock here. So these things enter my dreams afterwards.
Look at this.
Yeah.
I'll be curious to hear how your dreams are tonight.
Yeah. Well, it's pre-paving that I'm struck by. There are several things I'm struck by. Alicia, I guess we say Alicia, said something that I've got to rethink about, how we all express things that then come out. I do think that it's becoming a rare thing. It's why we're expressing gratitude. A lot of people are putting up their guard, afraid that what they say might get them worse than judged, but condemned by people. So I agree. This is an amazing thing. Yeah. Can't say it as well as Alicia was saying it, but
Oh, it's
it was
beautiful.
nice to
Thank
hear.
you. I
Yeah,
appreciate you.
I totally agree. And I think, I think too, I wanted to go back to the, what Betty, I think it was you who talked about the children, and I don't have a lot of contact with small children, but occasionally. And one of the things it struck me in the same way, like, it's like, my God, I didn't know all the stuff that they know today. And, they seem so much more, that little kid in our neighborhood, I mean, he's adorable, but sometimes it's like, how the heck does he know this? I mean, I like, but I am thinking too, I could be off, but, I mean, I think too that perhaps in earlier generations, there wasn't so much an emphasis on self-development, as there is today, to let the child be himself or herself, and it's like, it was like not so much perhaps of, an exploration and a widening in education. It's like, oh, you do what I say, but I mean, I think maybe there's more emphasis on exposing, even young children to a larger world
Yeah.
and more possibilities. And I think it's a different, I guess, maybe a different approach to parenting, just that we have today than there used to be, which allows them to be more sophisticated. Great, I can't even talk. That was good. Sophisticated. That was a really good one.
Yeah.
But
I think it
maybe
goes
it
both
is
ways
that,
for me.
to allow them that free growth instead of, stifling. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that.
Yeah. I think it goes both ways, this self-development. Well, first, I'm so discouraged by the idea that people have to sign their kid up for the best daycare so that they get a good start in life. But there are some good sides to wanting their kid to have the best start possible. That's very different from when kids didn't know uh, what their parents thought of them. There is a form of affirmation, Vanessa's forms of love that come out in our effort to get kids into the right daycare or whatever. As long as they're not being put in a daycare that's going to make them feel superior, there's this effort to help the kid become who he's going to become, I hope.
Yeah, but I also think it's more than that, like taking children to experience different countries. Of course, all of that is a matter of economics. I grant that, but I think exposing kids to different experiences, different countries, different, just that, so that they can have a lot of different perspectives, and just that general openness, I think.
Yeah.
David is here.
Hello.
Hi, welcome back.
Well,
He was
I won't talk too long. I'm in the waiting room, so I had to drive Grace Ann to El Paso. So about love, I noticed that my parents, they didn't touch, and I think both of them had kind of quirky things about sex and touching children, or even their own. So I didn't get hugged until I was 22, I think it was, by either one of them. And now I noticed I took the love test of the 5 languages, and it says that I like touch, I like to have an aesthetic touch thing going on. So that makes sense to me. But I'm starting to notice that my mother would do things like have a very clean house and have the meals prepared and a lot of spick and span and like getting on her knees and cleaning under the table, getting the chrome all. They had those chrome legs. We must have polished those forever when I was a kid. So there was something about that for her was love, and for my dad it was providing. Except he also, I think his kind of love was explaining things ad infinitum. Probably how come I'm a professor now, but anyway. So I'm starting to appreciate and forgive my parents' kind of love, and then I want it to be good with my children and grandchildren. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
I just last thing up for Vanessa, I just noticed that one of the things that you taught me in the Reiki Master course was to do an act of kindness, you know, just for today, find an act of kindness for some living being. And I don't know if I'm giving too much away about the Reiki thing. It stopped me, but
No,
there's
you're
also
good.
about to be in gratitude. So I'll throw that out for Tom. It's actually part of the things I write down in my notebook every day as I'm practicing for my exam for a master Reiki, you know.
Mm.
I'll share that and I'll be quiet because I'm in the waiting room.
I love that. I love that it's become an opportunity to forgive the people in our past, you know, realizing that
Mm.
people are doing what they can, you know, and like everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to show love, whether they, you know, have a thick shell around them or they're gooey, you know, like it's on some level we all desire it, right? Like I think mom, you told me a long time ago or many years ago, and you've heard you say it again, is that like babies, if they're not touched, they'll die, right? Like,
Mm.
Yeah.
and it's like that to me, it's like, oh wow. That's why like the more I get into this subject, the more I'm like, I think it's all of them. Like I feel like we need all of them, and we've just been programmed to believe that we don't, you know, that we, I don't know, that certain ones we can't, right? Like it's not safe to be physically touched, or it's not safe to speak our mind, or whatever it is. But I think on some level, when you're fully online and fully, you know, healed and get, or even on the path to that, the more you realize the different ways of loving and being loved and giving love and feeling safe in all those different ways.
Yeah.
Uh, Betty,
Yeah,
did you, or mom, go ahead.
well, just to add to that, I actually have this belief that the people that do things that might seem like they're power hungry by demanding that people do things for them, to me, is that they're trying to fill that need for love, but they don't know how to give it. They don't know, they don't love themselves. You know, I can imagine that any, say, person in history that was horrible to other people in a grand way was probably not raised by loving parents, I would imagine, and then got power and thought, oh, people are paying attention to me, and that was their way of feeling connected and
Yeah.
maybe loved, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, because from my perspective, anybody who's like ex practicing power over someone, it feels very disempowered within themselves and does not
Yeah.
love themselves. Like you
Yeah.
know, when you are fully in your heart and fully radiant, like you're a magnet, you know? So
Yeah.
there's no
And
need to power over anyone.
and to add to it, the person that might be always sounding like they need to show off or be the center of attention, and everybody goes, oh, that person really loves themselves too much. And actually, I think it's like you were saying, it's just the opposite. They don't love themselves, and that's how they're trying to fill it. And you know how we do assessments, like the introvert versus extrovert. When I felt like I was much more of an extrovert when I was really dealing with self-loathing when I was young. And the more I've healed and learned to love myself, the more of an introvert I've become. So I wonder if anybody else has seen that or shares that thought.
I think that matters a lot on how you're defining introvert and extrovert. Because if you're talking about Myers-Briggs as the method, they're not talking about how social you are. They're talking about how you collect energy.
Right.
And that's very different because
Yeah.
I admit, I'm a very strong introvert in terms of the social piece, but I collect energy by interacting with other people. So I'm really curious where you're coming from in that
Yeah.
statement.
I think I would want to be around people because I think that's how I filled. I didn't know how to get my own energy in a way. And so I was
Ah,
pulling it. I had I had no sense of self when I was 20 and both parents were gone and I was just out of the hospital after a year. Very low self-esteem, didn't really, I had been on my own a lot since my dad died when I was 5 and my mother was away. So I knew I'd survive, but I didn't know who to trust. And I would look to other people to figure that out. Where as I healed, then I could start to look to myself and trust my inner guidance. I think that's kind of the difference, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very different story. Trauma-informed introversion and extroversion is not what these tests are based on.
Okay.
Assume.
We might need a new test.
Yeah, because so many of us are trauma-informed, but we didn't know it.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah.
I think that's one of the real growth situations to answer the question about young people being brought up differently. I mean, it's really interesting to have a mother and a child on this call. Were you brought up with baby talk, Olivia?
Me?
Yeah. Did you talk baby talk when you were little?
I don't know. I don't, I lost my parents so long ago. I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, I'll give you my example. My parents, till the day they died, used to laugh about the funny language that we talked as babies.
Oh, I don't think I had that. That would have been.
And there was much less of that when I became a mother. And there's absolutely none of that with my grandchildren. And I think that's indicative of the answer to the question that Betty asked. I think it's as much cultural as it's as much cultural as individual nurturing.
Or, the thought about are now the old souls are coming through. So maybe baby talk.
I love it.
Because I learned so much from Vanessa and I'm thinking, I'm the mother here, It's
Well, I feel the
I am
same
father,
way.
right?
That's true.
I wanted to say that I think too, it's like, I don't think that there's that there's a better or worse in being introverted or extroverted, for example, I think, but what I'm seeing is that in the healing process, you get to calibrate to your truth. And if your truth is I am more extroverted or I am more introverted, then that's great. It's like that's why healing is so great. That's why I love the Reiki practice, the EFT, the subconscious repatterning is like it gets people back to their own truth, their own self. Right.
Well,
and so with your trauma healing, right, you got back to being yourself. Sorry.
And also the thing about what I've noticed now is that if I go to a party, if the people there want to have deep conversations, I feel like I'm gaining good energy. Where if I go to shallow conversations, that it's feels like it's being sucked out of me. So yeah, it's just interesting. I just thought about that. Good point.
Yeah.
This has been a wonderful discussion. Really excellent. I want to thank you, Vanessa. I love what you did today.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun. When you asked me to do it, I was like, okay, like, sure. It's like I never thought I would do a talk on the 5 love languages, but I'm glad we did. And I feel honored that it inspired all of you to share so deeply, and vulnerably, and to witness the compassion for yourselves and the people in your lives is really inspiring. And I know I keep saying that. And yeah, I'm so grateful for all of you.
David, we enjoyed writing to El Paso with you.
Yeah,
you might want to.
I had to turn off the Zoom and focus on my wife for a while.
Oh, and David, are you gonna, use the opportunity, to go to the restaurant?
I hope so. It depends. She's having some surgery on, and she may not want to eat. So.
Oh, okay. No, I get that. Okay. Just wondering if you're gonna go to the India Palace.
Oh,
Okay.
I love that. Yeah. So I want to say that on behalf of the Thinkment Circle, that one of the ways we think about love, I think is very relevant, and the ways that we use the language of love is really important. And I'm really appreciated this. I'm grateful, Tom, for the session today. And I always say I'm grateful, Tom, so, and I wonder if anybody wants to host next week.
I just want to say to save the chat if anybody wants to read the comments because they're great and you may not have caught them.
Okay.
Yeah, there were lots of good comments that we didn't get to. Yeah.
And there's a link that David shared the link if you want to take the quiz.
Okay.
Oh, thanks.
And it's also in the email, so you can take the quiz to find out what your love language is.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Thank you.
So maybe next week Tom could talk about gratitude.
What do you say, Tom? Can we put you on the spot?
Mhm.
I am on the spot now. That'll be fine.
Okay.
Mhm.
And if you log in, I'll try to leave my computer on. I might be flying or something. So anyway.
Are you
This will be a
leaving?
tough act to follow.
Are you leaving on
We're
Tuesday
supposed to
next
work. The first one that logs in is the host, but God only knows what'll happen.
Well, we will do our best.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tom. So next week's host is Tom and Lemke, and we will get you some information. And I just want to thank everybody for being here today. And I'm going to put this last part of the conversation on the line so my daughter and others can enjoy it. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yay,
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Right.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you so
Good
much.
night.
Bye.
Very